Welcome to the ProActive podcast, brought to you by Me Media.
G'day world, Chris Hogan coming to you from Me Media Studio here at Burleigh Heads for episode 132 of the ProActive podcast. And today I have with me Kasia Kondas, who is the founder and director of Mindful Energy, who are basically helping people, performance and change occur in organisations all over Australia. Thanks for joining me, Kasia.
Thank you for having me, Chris. It's awesome to finally be here and do this. Just a bit of background, if you like. I started in this sort of field, I guess pretty much as a graduate, in Perth, where I'm from, where I grew up. And the reason I fell into this field actually is because I was involved in sport quite heavily, competitive sport. So I was interested in sports psychology, and then realised, there's not that many opportunities for a graduate as a sports psych. So let me do something aligned to that, similar to that, and that was organisational psychology. And that's how I fell into this field that I'm in currently. And Mindful Energy, yes, is my business that I founded 5-6 years ago now, consulting in that space of people, performance, change and culture, with organisations around Australia, as you said,
Great. Great. Yeah, so sport's definitely a great foundation because there's so much, I guess, definitely performance, but also change that needs to occur for athletes and individuals in and around, managing their motivation, potential injuries they might have.
And culture is a big one too right now. You might hear on the news the issues that are currently, so yes, even in that context. And as org psychs, we work at 3 levels. The culture of the whole organisation, the team and its performance, and then the leader. So it's sort of at the 3 onion levels, if you like, which is fun. Yeah,
beautiful. If you will like, you do have your sunnies on your
head.
Sure. Cool. So I guess the reason why I guess we engaged, from the first time we met is because Me Media has a place in the whole development of culture in workplaces as well. And sometimes this is often when we get involved with a client, it's the first time they've even looked at this. So while that statement, culture is strategy, has been around for decades, it's still playing out in workplaces and organisations, and it is becoming a really big deal. And like you said, there's news articles out now around sporting organisations that really need to improve their culture. So when we get involved with our clients, it is, from a marketing perspective. But really what I've come to find is it doesn't matter what perspective or motivation that drives the leader to improve or change their culture. It doesn't matter where that comes from or what their ultimate goal is for doing that. It just matters that I think that they started.
So true. So often people think, culture, who's going to do it? Is it HR? Is it some external consultant? But actually it starts at the very top with the leader, with the top leader and the leadership team as a whole, So we definitely, start and work closely with, often actually with marketing / communications agencies, in that we partner together in building internal brand first, which then should exude and make it easier for the external brand to be communicated and marketed.
Of course.
But definitely the starting point is leadership at the very top, and then their leadership team. So often we start the work up there, and then trickle it down, and then and then at the same time partnering with external agencies too.
Yeah. And something you said there is about internal brand versus external brand. What we've discovered is basically authenticity is super important, because if you're not walking the walk and it's just all about talk, then the first people who are going to notice is your internal team, right? Is your employees, your contractors, and so they're going to call you out on it, or if they don't want to have that conflict with the leadership team, then they're just going to walk.
And this is the issue right now. One of the key challenges businesses are facing is they're losing talent. There's a shortage of talent, as you may know, around the country. And that's part of it's, not connecting and engaging teams and people in a meaningful, purposeful way internally through some sort of internal brand building, work that one would do. Retention is becoming a bit of an issue there. Yeah.
Yeah, great. We spoke off camera just earlier about an experience that I had with an engineering client of ours who we embarked on this journey to, improve their values and improve their purpose of the organisation. And we tapped into a lot of things, especially how important mental health was to the organisation. And, through working with them on branding and marketing assets, it took around 6 months for them to actually adjust to the whole idea and the concept of, hey, we need to work on things internally. I believe they were there from the get-go, because otherwise they wouldn't have let us move forward with the marketing side of things. But I think it was that internal resources, who's going to do it, that was I guess the barrier for them to move forward. So having someone like yourself available to an organisation like that, how much do they lean on you? What is it that you actually do?
Yeah, good question. We're like the enablers, basically. We don't do it for our organisations.
No one can, right?
Exactly. It's that's right. It's the work of the leadership team, but we work with the leadership team and the broader team in general at a number of levels when it comes to culture. From obviously starting from strategy and values and behaviours, but also around systems, processes, even technology to some extent. It all has to line up and align with what you're trying to achieve. So, we come in, do an initial assessment, usually a baseline assessment of culture, and then look at strategically, okay, where do you want to be? What's the gap? And then put in a number of programs and systems and processes that help the organisation move towards that. And a lot of it's working with teams and leaders and teams and helping to shape those things together rather than imposing things on people. You're actually getting them to co-create what it is that we're doing, and then you get a lot more skin in the game and uptake. And in that change process that you're trying to enact, if that's what it is, or bring in those new values.
Sure. So what's sort of driving this change of culture or I think importance placed on culture at the moment? What do you think that is?
Well, if I look at it at a board level, it's sort of corporate governance aspects for sure. It's becoming more and more, I think, I think businesses understand what a bad culture can do to an organisation. So it's sort of coming from the top end almost. But why focus on culture? Well, I guess what I've always worked on through culture programs is to improve performance for the business, the team, the individual. I mean, that's the real kind of, ticket that you can get out of doing work on culture, that you can build a high performance culture, you can build a safe culture, you can build a healthy and effective culture through working on these aspects and these programs to help align with your strategy and achieve your business goals quicker, faster, with the right intent and, mindfully, purposefully. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. You're absolutely right that governance is super important, and I'm a member of the AICD, and I refer to them in my book just around how I was pleasantly surprised that an organisation like the AICD would actually go out and create guidelines for governance around culture for the board. And I was really stoked to hear that. I was very passionate about values, purpose, culture, and when I heard that, I was truly amazed. So, I completely agree with you there. The performance side of things, it covers so many different aspects, isn't it? It's not about, for me, it's not about, I guess, quantity. It's about quality. So, for example, now we're talking about. Well, we've had to deal a lot with, remote working situations. And then, now we're talking about, a lot of people talking about 4-day work weeks. So
True.
Having almost less on your plate, enabling you to be less busy and more mindful can help increase productivity as well. So where are we sitting on that based on your experience? Is that becoming popular where people are actually dialing back the amount of time in the office, like for example 4-day work weeks, remote working must be just normal now, right? And then even just, I guess, strategic thinking time, like, just, I guess, not meetings, because that's still not time to think.
Not really.
Is that...
Yeah.
So first of all, can we go through those? So
Yep.
4-day work weeks, remote working, and just strategic time out?
Sure. Yeah, look, with the clients I'm working with at the moment, which range from large engineering firms to not-for-profits even, not so much in government, to be honest, but connected in that way. And definitely seeing, well, everybody right now in Queensland is working from home, quite a number, not everybody, I shouldn't say that, but probably half of the clients I have are currently taking this month and maybe more to work from home. So they're well and truly set up now, because last year we repositioned, we pivoted towards working more this way anyway, and it's sort of now quick and easy to switch back and forth as needed. I haven't seen the 4-day week so much yet in my client circles, but I definitely see kind of more focused times that are being created virtually, to work on specific projects or thought processes or innovations that might be on the cards. And what I'm definitely noticing is a lot of retreats, what I call retreats. They're not necessarily physical, but it can be, where they take a half a day or a day out to work on strategy. Yeah. And that's like dedicated time just to think ahead and forward rather than in the weeds of the day-to-day. So I'm facilitating a lot of those kind of workshops for clients as well, for those away days. Yeah.
We're certainly seeing it as a normal practice for people to have workshops with us to develop their strategy, half days, full days. But sometimes it's, you got the blinkers on, you're not sure if that's just you or everybody. So that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you finding they're becoming a little bit more regular, like as in more, there were days when we used to develop 5-year strategies. Finding that, it's an annual, at least an annual kind of review that we do with clients. Is that similar to what you're finding?
Easily annual. Yeah, easily. I mean, last year was quite an interesting year in that we felt like at the beginning of the year, it was like, hey, Australia, go. We're all good. We got no issues. In fact, we got so few issues with our economy that the Federal, Reserve Bank of Australia was basically going to up interest rates because we're going to achieve, our a payment of debt off, earlier than expected and all this sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden, cases rose and more lockdowns occurred, and across multiple states, and so we've got a few clients in Sydney, so we were working with them. Queensland was relatively unscathed for most of 2021. So that pivot in the middle of the year was there was a lot of time to talk about, okay, look, what assets are we creating? For example, we don't know how long we're going to be in this for. What do we do? And so, well, the first thing was, we had 2020 to sort of warm up to this stuff. So we were pretty relatively unscathed in 2020, funnily enough. 2021 was the hardest year out of the two. Go figure. But yeah, the strategy didn't so much, I think, change because we had a really sound strategy. It was more so, I think, the individual assets inside that, or those individual projects inside of that. Some of them got pulled forward. Yes. And it was like, oh, we're going to do that, in 3 months' time. But hang on a minute, no, we need it. We need it sort of this month. And my client likened this whole process to the American bison, and in basically in times of storms, cattle will run away from the storm, try and outrun the storm. Horses will often just stand there with their ass into the rain or the storm and just stand there, with some shelter normally. But and cows will do that when they're out in the open too. They'll actually just stand with their bums into the rain often. But bison do neither of the above, they will run headfirst into the storm, therefore getting through it quicker.
Interesting.
So we said we're just like the American bison.
Yes.
We're going to head down and just run through the storm,
Proactively,
right?
kind of, yeah.
And being proactive is our methodology, and absolutely. So we were proactive, saying that, okay, we're going to come out of this one day. What do we want to come out of it with? Those projects that we had on the sideline, we're going to pull those forward. And essentially what then occurred was, when we came out, it was like a release of, all of this, I think, customers' pent-up energy, because we'd been just like ear bashing them, Facebook, Instagram, email, you name it, and basically saying, hey, you need this, you love this. There's ways you can do business with us now, or there's ways you can do business with us when we come out. Most people chose the latter.
Yeah.
And our client just, several of our clients just got absolutely inundated with work based on all of that preparation that we did.
Exactly. And I think you're right. It's about what they did in the middle of the year or that year at some point, whether there was some opportunity, and whether they took the opportunity, more importantly, to pivot or reinvent themselves or take up those new opportunities that were presenting themselves in the digital space, for example, and actually being prepared for when, things, normalize a little, if we can say that even, this year. So, that definitely. And some of the work we do is also, in terms of change, is to do with organisational restructures, so redesigning the organisational model, and also the organisational structure that sits below that, aligned to the strategy and where that strategic direction's going, obviously. So that was what we did a lot of work with last year with clients to position them, like you said, for this next wave of next iteration, because it's an ongoing thing,
Of course.
And definitely one of the pitfalls for some organisations has been to stay static and not take those opportunities and not reinvent, not pivot, not do those things, and let alone continue to build their leadership capability, which is the other piece that's found to be has come to the fore this year.
Super.
Because we're seeing that as COVID hits here in Queensland, a lot of people stepping out, needing to step out, and there's not enough leadership capability within the business to step up and lead. So it's a real kind of quandary that businesses are in, those who haven't sort of proactively thought about investing in their people and leadership capability. And that's some of the work we're doing currently, because actually we've just come across some interesting funding that allows businesses to do this without too much cost. And so it's actually a really beautiful little sweet spot right now to do it if you haven't been already, and get that investment happening in that space, because that starts with the leader, as we say, in terms of culture.
We all need to work on ourselves. I take a huge interest in the personal growth of my team. But sometimes, that's to the detriment of my own growth, so I understand the importance of, investing in my own growth as well as the team. And leadership is absolutely, a hot topic right now. Fish rots from the head is the common saying. So, and with these extra stresses that's sort of been placed upon us, it's so important to understand how to just manage your stress levels and all of that wellness stuff. I'm not underplaying it by calling stuff. It's super important. But then that communication, leadership is even more important now. So especially when we have remote teams. So. Then that may mean that the leaders need to adopt new technology, to ensure that they're keeping up the communication levels. And I found we're going on so many tangents here. But what's really interesting is with all of the screen time, that's been increased during the last 2 years. I'm no stranger to screens, and I do know that, I've got to up my energy when I'm on screen, right? It's, you call it, I call it the 110% rule, like, and I've watched things back and go, hang on a minute, mate, you were a bit dull there, so pick it up. I've also do the same thing on screens, because, on Zoom meetings and the like, because I know that, if I'm just going at 100%, then that's not really going to translate. Yeah. So leaders are getting worn out. They've got to adopt this technology, and then they do it, and they're absolutely buggered when they go home, and then they're going, I don't really like that. It's ruining me for the rest of the week. So my question to you is are you actually helping leaders adopt technology to help, communicate within their teams, or is that something that they have to still do on their own?
Well, good question. Yeah, it's definitely been the sort of focus for the last year or so. And I've noticed that obviously the uptake of things like Teams and Zoom and so on hugely in these lockdown periods in particular. So, yeah, I think we've gone a huge way forward with just capability in that space. I don't personally do that kind of capability development other than encouraging them to use the platforms and do our programs through this. So some of the programs have been blended in person where we could, and then some virtually through Teams and a few other useful platforms that are out there.
Yeah, it's probably a different department.
Yeah, no, but that's okay, because what I was going to say, what is relevant there around leadership development is, because in our leadership programs that we run over 6 to 12 months, is there's a definitely a piece around resilience building and wellness, and I can come back to that point, resilience and well-being, which is such an important part through these times of change to build that capability. It's a muscle. Resilience is a muscle, just like any other muscles. You can build it if you work on it and have particular techniques and processes you can use every time, to help build that resilience. So we definitely incorporate that aspect. And yes, our programs are hybrid, so they can be digital or they can be in person, if that makes sense. Because yes, clients, definitely Teams has been a big one, I've noticed. Zoom too, but probably more Teams I've noticed. It
depends on the
it depends on the organisation. Yeah, either way, it doesn't matter. They're all quite good these days. They've been quite honed through this last little recent time to become quite effective. Not the same. It's still not the same, and that's why those downtimes and physical in-person retreats and things are really helpful to break it up a bit, because leaders are getting tired of just looking at the screen. Yeah.
It's when we first had to go into lockdown in March 2020. To be honest, I felt like I was in my comfort zone. Right. I think going through the GFC, when you've been in business for a really long time, you certainly come to know lots of different, I guess, economic fluctuations, challenges and whatnot. And one of those for us was the GFC. We got hit really hard back then. And I was just like, this is just GFC 2.0. We know exactly what to do. Needless to say, it had its own, flavour of twists and turns. But that was, I had the resilience from the GFC to know, right, I know what I've got to do, albeit, and I was about to say, albeit I had to increase my physical exercise or focus on my physical self, because I knew how taxing it was going to be, being at 110% on cameras for sustained periods of time. So I increased my exercise during that time, which is exactly was the advice from all of the healthy people and cultural people out there, but I just knew that really well. So I felt like I was in my zone, and somewhat lucky to be there. Yeah. So when it came time to direct our clients in their marketing, which is exactly what we do, we are effectively the marketing directors for our clients. Then it was just like, this is what we do, no problems, and have the methodology to back it up.
Right, you can actually role model it because you've been there. Whereas a lot of clients, not everybody has had that experience.
No, that's right.
Particularly in their own business and all the extra things that come with that.
Yeah. So, awesome. What are some of the biggest problems that you're facing with regards to implementing, these cultural shifts? Could you elaborate?
Cultural shifts.
Well, even just
culture programs.
Organisations, implementing cultural programs.
Yep. Okay, well, I think the biggest challenges, the biggest challenge is usually, making sure the leadership team is fully engaged and on board with what we're trying to do strategically, but also with the program that's built and with their skin in the game. So I usually only draft things in order for the team to get involved in finalising the program so that they've got that, input, that skin in the game around what's going to be done, because that is a
stakeholder
challenge.
engagement. Is that sort of what you're talking
internally.
about?
Yep, internally. Yep.
Yes.
Which in an organisation will be the leadership team. Yep, the CEO.
Yeah, so I imagine there'd be, once upon a time there would have been a lot of pushback towards all this cultural stuff.
Yeah.
Is that changed now? Are people on board?
A little bit more, just the definition of culture is better understood, and there's more examples and case studies of where it's gone wrong. So yes, a little bit, but it's still, I feel like on its own, it doesn't have as much merit as when you link it to the strategy. So I always start actually with some strategy pieces. How does that then play out in terms of the values? So strategy is where you're going. Mm-hmm. The values is how you're going to get there, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you put those two together, I find it's a perfect sort of a combo to get clients on board, because it's got to be the what and the how to me, always. Yeah. So I think that's been that challenge. I think if you can get them involved is a way to sort of help that process. The rest, it's a long-term game. Culture change and culture building is not an overnight exercise of a few months. It's a year, it's 2 years. And so commitment to, measuring, I find is really important. So doing a baseline measurement of culture when you start, to have a tangible picture of what it looks like. And also then designing the ideal culture that they are looking for, picture, and then looking, okay, this is the gap. And these are the strategies to help close the gap over a longer period of time, because it's not going to happen in even 1 year. If it's a significant shift, it's a sustained effort. So commitment to a sustained change, which means commitment to the resources and the involvement. It doesn't have to be huge on resources, because we enable a lot of that, but to be involved in a program that runs over 6 to 12 months at least, it gives you more return on investment for sure. And that sometimes isn't. People think it's a quick fix, and it sure ain't. I totally agree. And we've had cultural shifts here that have had to occur, and they take a long time. To embed, right? To initially you feel like, okay, we've done it, but then you've got to actually stick it down. You've got to reinforce it. Yeah.
The reinforcing process, and then just acknowledging areas where you can improve, and go, okay, now we need to focus on that, but don't let the other stuff fall by the wayside.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a constant. It's a constant battle, but it's one that I know has a huge payoff, because, I know that with regards to marketing, for example, it pays off very well. It is important for organisations to tell the entire organisation of what they're up to. So where we were talking about stakeholder engagement, we want engagement from the entire organisation. And we want them to have a voice if they see something that doesn't really resonate, or they see a way that they think, things could be improved in line with that cultural shift. So, so our marketing will basically going in. Values is where we start, absolutely. But values, purpose, and then the strategy on top of that, and then we start to go, right, okay, how is this going to play out? In the marketing sense, visually, website, social media, so on and so forth. Where are we going to show evidence of this shift occurring? And then recording that. And yes, we distribute it externally, but more importantly, all of the internal stakeholders end up following all of everything that's on, on social media and on the website that's being said about these, new programs in place for this cultural shift, and they get to come along for the ride.
Yeah.
Along for the ride. Well, they are on the ship. They're doing the rowing essentially, but it's important that they believe in doing the rowing. If they don't believe in the destination, then they're just going to stop rowing.
Exactly, and it starts on that inside, because the internal culture or brand, I kind of use them synonymously because they're, to me, the same thing. You're building an internal brand through those values, which, if you get that bit right, it exudes itself externally anyway. It's so much easier to market that and actually align your brand values externally with what's happening inside naturally. I always come back to this example of Harley Davidson, and their brand values are so strong that even if you ask the sweeper of the floor at the workshop, he'll tell you exactly not what what it means to be working and living the culture of and the values of that particular brand. So so that person goes outside and meets someone externally, a client, anyone externally, they'll know that it's consistent, it's aligned, the values, the behaviors are aligned. It's not two separate things. They've got to believe it internally first.
Yes.
For it to naturally flow out, and then make that so much easier for the marketing to happen.
It seems to be a very popular in the Western cultures, Western countries. That culture is really risen to the surface as a very important thing to focus on. I don't engage with a lot of Asian cultures. I spent a fair bit of time in Asia. Read a lot about what goes on in Asia, specifically Japan. But I think the book Ikigai, have you ever indulged in that at all?
Yes.
Basically, people are just happy doing, and grateful to be doing what they're doing, and they, focus, all their energy on doing it and have pure and utter joy and gratitude towards doing whatever it is they're assigned to do.
Being in the moment, kind of present with it. Yeah.
Present, right? And, you can see it in sushi, for example. That's a great example because, they make works of art out of, a piece of fish and rice,
That's
right?
So true.
So in the Western cultures, it seems to be that it's very important to focus on culture more, which I find really strange. I know in Japan, it's a very obedient sort of...
Can be, yeah.
Yeah, toe the line, just do what you're told kind of...
Compliance sort of.
Yeah, a little. But whereas in America, it's, freedom, free your mind, do whatever you want, just be passionate about it. So have you found this, like that, like where is this hype? I call it hype, but where is this trend sort of coming from? Are we getting it a lot from America? Are we following what America's doing in this case? Like, because you refer to Harley Davidson. I mean, we refer to Patagonia a lot. In my book, I wrote a lot about Patagonia.
Brand.
Oh, my God.
What a great brand. Yep.
Oh, Yvon Chouinard, amazing guy. And, like, is there anything coming out of the UK, or are we mostly following what America's doing here?
I think our definitions of... It depends on the maturity of the brand.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I feel. Those and also obviously who's leading at the top end, of course. Look, we I've worked mainly in Europe. Only a little bit in Asia, and certainly there, like Daimler Chrysler Mitsubishi was one of my key clients there. And the Germans do a brand well, when it comes to manufacturing and that sort of thing. Yep, we and certainly there, that's where I actually worked very much hand in hand with marketing comms people and building. I did the internal brand building, and together with the marketing and comms people, we built a brand, full stop, in and out. And they were very proactive and very forward-looking and thinking about brand and culture.
Yes.
If you think about it.
Yeah, I was just sort of wondering, sort of where is it stemming from? Is there a country in the world that's sort of leading the way here? And I see what you're saying about global brands. The biggest global brands are mostly in America.
The culture you're talking about.
Specific culture. Well, so the biggest brands is where we learn that how they've embedded culture. So of course Apple and Pixar and then and Google and and they're all American. I did work in the UK, so yes, I saw cultural stuff happen there, but that was quite a while ago, so there wasn't a huge buzzword then.
Yeah, I mean, I do use a specific tool that I for measuring culture, and it's actually out of New Zealand, of all places.
Amazing.
And it's been put together 25 years ago by a bunch of psychologists, and it's a very reliable tool that's used in MBA programs and in big corporates all over the world now to this day. But it actually comes from New Zealand, and it is actually a really useful.
Is that the circumplex?
Yes, the circumplex.
Yep.
Correct. Yes, the circumplex, and it talks about culture in terms of style. So there's 12 different styles, cultural styles, one an organisation can express, and there's some very strong correlations between certain styles and performance, organisational performance, health, safety, effectiveness, and a bunch of other bits of data that correlate with a particular style or styles that bring you all the things that most organisations are after. Performance, in terms of achieving and hitting and smashing their goals, but doing it in a mindful way that develops people along the way, doesn't do it aggressively, because there's often a bit of a misunderstanding between an aggressive culture being a high-performance culture, and it's actually not necessarily at all that.
No, aggressive is not a good value to uphold. I actually did come across a client that had aggressive as one of their values, and I explained to them that that probably wasn't a good idea. That's really interesting. So it's come out of New Zealand. That's really cool. So circumplex psych, and that's is that specifically for leadership, or is it?
It's at 3 levels. That's why I love it so much, because you can do it at the individual leader level, because like we said earlier, a leader sets the tone for the culture of the organisation. So you can do it at that level. You can do it at a group level, like a business unit or one team, and organisation-wide. So when you're talking about input from staff about what they like, don't like, through these surveys, they actually get to have their say. And we get to see that in the circumplex results, to say, okay, well, this is where we are currently, and we're trying to get to here. How are we tracking towards there?
Fantastic.
And that feedback is, through the entire organisation. So, so it's actually really helpful.
Yeah, well, feedback's super important. We call it market research.
Yep.
It's too many people go out and create a product or a business or a service for a market that they've just made up in their head, and with little to no research, right? Well, so feedback's super important.
Same, but different. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's all right. So internal market, I guess.
Yeah.
That's really great. So one of the areas that I was asking about before, like what are some of the barriers to creating change, organisational change, and something that had occurred to me was that budget cuts seem to hit the hardest in and you can correct me if I'm wrong. They seem to hit hardest in obviously people and performance, and marketing. So oftentimes, traditionally, people would go, right, cut the marketing budget and cut all training. Do you find the same?
Yep. When the going gets tough, those organisations that aren't really committed to these things, that's the first thing that does get cut. You're right. It's both. And, it doesn't need to be that way, because, yes, I understand the pressures on things. However, there's some very smart things available now. The government is providing a lot of funding, grants, all sorts of things that really have been helpful throughout this whole period already, and create basically a training budget for the organisation to use for developing and growing their people internally, externally possibly too, I'm not sure, but certainly for capability building. There's plenty of resources out there that one can tap into, even if the budget does get shaved a little or cut. That there are ways around these things, and that's quite fortunate that we've got that sort of time in space right now where that's available.
That's great.
So I think that's helpful.
Purpose, obviously, that's a huge thing of mine, and I think it's been around for decades as well, eons probably. Does that come up for you? Like, do people go, we don't understand our purpose? And is that work hand in hand with that word culture as well in your
So interesting. Yeah, it does, because a lot of the work we do around strategic alignment is around something I call a team charter. And, and that includes a vision and a purpose that we co-create. And without that purpose, we're finding that the engagement and the connection that people build around purpose, as you know, is so important that if you don't have it and if you don't work on that, that you have implications, as in people being disengaged and then potentially leaving as well, of course, because it is super important, and it's part of the work we do. Not so much part of culture work, but definitely part of strategic alignment as well, aligning the team to the strategy, which includes purpose.
And how far do you take it? Because you're, like you said, you're working organisationally, you're working with leadership, and you're working with individual teams often. So does that purpose have to say, hey, here's the overarching purpose, here's the individual team's purpose, here's your purpose?
Yeah.
How far does it go?
Yeah, it can vary, It's different organisations play this out differently. We definitely do one at the organisational level, of course, as part of the strategy and And then we kind of we cascade that down. And in a team workshop, we might take those words and either go, yep, that we'll just run with that if they feel connected enough to it. But sometimes they go, oh, I don't even know what that means. So unpacking it, and we might distill it and just make it a little bit more crispy for that team. Still in line, but sometimes it is slightly, it's distilled to make it more meaningful for that, that audience. Yeah. So it varies. Some literally just take and go, yep, that sounds great, we'll just use it here. Others just need that little bit of extra granularity or interpretation that connects. Yeah.
No, I think that's fantastic, because a lot of people, need a purpose to get out of bed, right? Other than I guess what's put in front of them, maybe their family and whatnot. Look, that's, I explain that in my book. I actually went through a midlife crisis without the fast cars, the fast women, and and a divorce, and so look at me laughing about it now. It was actually a struggle, right? And finding that purpose, my own purpose, was really important, and I guess that is the reason why that book exists. So helping individuals with their own purpose is a huge passion of mine, and then obviously I've just wondered, with those huge organisations, how far does that go? And how granular does it get for those teams? And you sort of said, it can be distilled down and made crispy, like that. For certain teams, and that is important. So, sorry I had to reframe that just for myself, but
No.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Thanks, Chris. Yeah. No, but at the individual level, it's at the end of the day, that's what matters. And sometimes you can do that through coaching.
Absolutely. And so that's all that people performance sort of thing for you. Do you also then sometimes engage, individual team members for
one-on-one coaching?
One-on-one?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Yep. So I work at those three levels. Yeah, definitely one-on-one type of coaching or programs, and then that building team alignment, team performance, team engagement, and then the culture at a broader level usually, and organisational change at a broader level. Yeah. So it's kind of three layers.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, our methodology is called ProActive. It's called the ProActive Podcast. Where do you think that you are most proactive in your life, and how does that actually benefit you?
Oh, good question. I knew you were going to ask me that. I should have known you would ask me that. Look, and I guess it comes back to why I started this business called Mindful Energy, purposefully. It had multiple meanings to me, but also hopefully out there too, because I think sometimes when we're working in corporates in particular, you get a bit lost in the whole big machine, and things get a little bit skew in terms of your own purpose. And so I health and wellness, as you know, is one of my key values in life. I feel like it's the foundation to be able to perform at your best. Came from my sporting background, but also mentally, physically, emotionally, in all of those ways. So I think I'm really proactive in that space, and I think it flows out to how I do my business too, because mindful energy, people, performance, and change do actually incorporate and integrate a lot of wellness components into each one of these things that I do, not as a separate standalone thing, but rather as part of the change, culture, team alignment. Anything that I'm doing has actually got a flavour of a well-being and health in it.
So
that's
for
deliberate.
In order for you to show up as your best self, you need to be proactive, right? And so yoga's one of your practices as well, isn't it?
It sure is. Yeah. So I've been teaching yoga for about 20 years now.
Yep. Isn't it horrible when you start saying that
sounds like a really long time.
Put a tour in front of everything.
But a long time. In any case. And people always ask me, do you want to get out of corporate and just do yoga? Or the other way around and that sort of thing. But I've always no, that I need that deliberately I've put that deliberately in my life so I can integrate myself and be, balanced in how I live my life and do my corporate work, that I do it mindfully and with purpose and with intention and with health and wellness intact, not burnt out and stressed out.
Yes.
Like a lot of executives can
Absolutely.
be. So that's,
And sorry, you said integrated there. Has yoga been integrated into any of the work you've done with your clients?
I have. Yeah,
right.
I have for some programs, retreats and things. Not necessarily me running it, but I having because I'm
that's
running.
What I was wondering. You running it?
Yeah,
no?
not necessarily. Occasionally, but not usually, because I'm running the day, the facilitation of the day. It's hard to sort of wear.
I was just wondering how the workshops sort of play out. Okay, everybody come in, and we're going to be.
But yes, but you know what? But in the workshops, in terms of what I do is definitely a little mindfulness exercise before we start. We might do some stretches, not the entire yoga practice, obviously, but
some downward dogs in your suit.
Well, not quite, but a few little stretches that really challenge the suit. Yep. but doable, and they work.
Wear your comfy pants when you do a workshop with Kasia.
Exactly. You might be standing on your head. No.
Beautiful. Kasia, what's going on for you right now? Is there anything exciting happening for you that maybe is different from what we discussed?
Right. I'm really super excited right now because I found this funding that's available to all these businesses, and I'm excited to offer a bunch of things that they may or may not have previously been able to access, at this moment in time. So I'm really, mindful that not all businesses some are struggling, some are doing well. So great if you are doing well, but some aren't. So it's good to have that option to provide clients with. Doing more leadership development, culture work is always exciting to me. I'm always enthused at the start of the year as I set my goals, and I'm super pumped to continue to work with some clients that I do have already, and also some new ones that I'm chatting to and will be chatting to. So it's sounding like an interesting year ahead.
Yeah, great. So Mindful Energy, is that just .com.au?
Yeah.
Great. Is there any other socials that people can follow you personally or the brand?
Just on LinkedIn, I guess, for the corporate side. But in the wellness side, the same business, but it's Mindful Energy Yoga Health and Wellness is on Instagram and Facebook. Yeah.
You're doing a lot of stretches.
A lot. Yeah.
And on the side of pools and buildings
all sorts of things.
Yeah, so if you're scared of heights, maybe just be careful with that one.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Kasia. So that's sorry for the audience. How do we spell that?
Kasia, spelled Kasia.
There you go.
Yeah. Kondas. Yeah.
Kondas, and of course mindfulenergy.com.au, and check out her socials. I'm sure you'll be entertained and maybe even educated. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Thanks so much for coming, Kasia. We love having guests like you on board, full of energy, and basically helping us to, think about how we can be more proactive, just like you guys. Keep watching. It's all over Apple. The podcast is on Apple. It's on YouTube and it's on Spotify, and we host it on our website as well, memedia.com.au. Thanks, guys, and see you soon.